Hello everybody, today I want to look at a game between Misfits and XL from week 3 of the LEC Spring Split. I found this game interesting but wasn't sure whether to use it for a video because a lot of the issues here seem to be communication related and just a general lack of focus and direction from Misfits. However, I think there were some interesting things worth looking at. I think in this game Misfits had an identity crisis. Their composition was good at split pushing, poking and even diving in for a team fight, but it felt like the players were not on the same page. They seemed to start fights while LeBlanc and Chase were not present and were overall too aggressive while one or both of their solo laners wasn't in position. Their composition can teamfight in my opinion, but they had to decide to either commit to a split push and play safe in the mid lane, or play as 5 and go for a poke and slow methodical approach to teamfighting. On the other hand, XL's comp was very good at dealing with diving and not too terrible when facing off against poke. They have a lot of control, and it is worth to note XL played this really well and were very controlled in these team fights. The early game saw some kills being traded back and forth, with the solo laners from Misfits being able to get ahead. Slowly but surely Misfits were able to build a lead and both LeBlanc and Jace were in a good spot in the game. However, as we go into the mid game, Misfits did not adjust their aggression and took fights without good setup, with Jace and LeBlanc often having to come in late with less than ideal positioning. You see that in minute 22 right before the dragon spawn as Misfits engage on the Leona, with LeBlanc having to teleport in and Jace coming from the river. Initially it's a 1-for-1 trade, but LeBlanc finds herself in a difficult spot. Pantheon ults in, but XL's defensive abilities come into play, securing them a second kill in this fight. Watch XL's movement here. I've talked about this with damage dealers being left in the tail position as teams transition mid to river. However, Misfits are not in a position to punish. If you want to look for a fight, this is a good opportunity, but you need to set up around it. However, I think LeBlanc and Jace were looking just to pressure the side lanes instead. After the additional 1-for-1, LeBlanc's TP puts her in front of Cho'Gath and she has to wrap around. I think LeBlanc could have managed her distance to get better timing with the Pantheon, but I suspect the call may have come from Pantheon that he's ulting in, and you can see the channel starts pretty early on. So it's possible LeBlanc plays this more aggressively because of that. However, the Pantheon ult takes a good few seconds to channel and come through, so this might be lack of experience playing with Pantheon. The other thing here is Pantheon's timing. Cho'Gath is able to set up his knock-up and cancels the stun coming in. He seems to time it off Xayah's ultimate perfectly, so Pantheon actually jumps into it. When you're dealing with a lot of defensive abilities, it is a good idea to disrupt your own timing. Meaning, Pantheon shouldn't jump on the Xayah instantly as her ultimate ends, because that allows Cho'Gath to time his Q off it as well. It's kind of like a mind game. You predict that your opponent is going to predict your move, so you delay your move a bit so that your opponent's counter ends up whiffing. Pressing your buttons as fast as possible is predictable and not always the best option. Last thing about this situation is Jace's movement. I think he should have maintained his flank and continued the same route. This could give him an opportunity to poke from the side and potentially pick off anyone who flashes backwards. Also, if Cho'Gath challenges him, that means the knockup doesn't enter on Pantheon, so you can get that benefit as well. A few minutes later, we get another somewhat aggressive move while not everyone from Misfits is in position to respond, and the Pantheon ends up going down. With that, we arrive at our first dragon fight with soul point available for both teams. LeBlanc is in the top lane, and once again TP is in late, and once again XL's defensive abilities prevail, with Misfits getting only one kill for what eventually becomes the dragon, the ace and the baron for XL. I will set aside what I think went wrong this fight, as one glaring fault is the late arrival of LeBlanc. Let's assume Misfits do the right thing and decide minutes before the dragon spawns if they're going to contest it or commit to a split push. So they decide to contest the dragon. Here's what I think Misfits should do. Basically, set up a 1-3-1 in the river. Chase behind the pit, 3-man core in the river, with LeBlanc wrapping all the way around the blue into this area. Jace can look for poke as LeBlanc squeezes from the other side, making it very awkward for XL. Jace then can move deeper into the flank for the engage. If he gets challenged by the Azir, of course he has to deal with it, keeping in mind once again a fight for the flank, splits up the defensive abilities of Excel. Remember Showcase Engage from last video? A similar thing can happen here. Pantheon can ult in, with defensive abilities getting used by Excel, the wings and Kai'Sa can collapse to finish off the kills. Alistar also can try and buy enough time for Kai'Sa in the center to get the right timing to ult into the back. Basically, we have to understand that Excel have enough defensive abilities to deal with our initial engage, so we want to draw them out and have players in position for a secondary engage or collapse after those defensive abilities get used. I'm not saying it's easy for Misfits to execute this, however, if they were going to fight with this team composition, I think that's how they have to do it. This game ends with Pantheon once again getting picked off as Misfits walk in too aggressively while LeBlanc is in the top lane. Excel get the Baron and win the game. Now, even if it's a 4v5, Misfits can do a similar thing in this Baron situation. When red team does Baron, this corridor is very important. If Jace is here and LeBlanc is here, Excel's damage dealers have little space where they can be safe. Jace can poke and pressure with Alistar threatening as well, forcing Excel's damage dealers to either move into the pit or move away. LeBlanc should be looking for either angle. Jace can be actually the one to dive in, with Alistar using his CC to delay Excel's control players from responding. If the timing works out, Kai'Sa and LeBlanc can be the follow-up after defensive abilities come out. Baron always goes for Excel here, but winning the fight might mean winning the game, and that's what Misfits should focus on rather than attempt a steal against a Smite and a Cho'Gath. Once again, this won't be easy at all, but it is the only way I see that can give Misfits some chance in this situation. I hope I was able to get the basic idea across. I think Misfits could have split push with this comp if they wanted to, but I also think they could have teamfought as well. It all comes down to what the players are more comfortable with and feel more confident doing. To me, it looked like Misfits felt confident in their damage output, but